So, welcome to Harbor Spaces. Today, I'm being interviewed by our new news anchor and chief editor at WBKB, Sumner Moorer.
Yeah.
She just moved here from Greenville,
South Carolina.
South Carolina, and she's excited to be here. We're excited to have her. She had many choices of places she could go and decided Alpena seemed quaint and beautiful and something that she wanted to be involved with. So we get the honor of having her in our community for the next couple of years. And it's such a blessing to be in your presence. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, one of the main reasons I wanted to come here today was kind of talk about, your journey. But first, the big question. What is going to happen for Big Boy?
Yes, lots of talk about that. So I bought the Big Boy building a couple years ago, initially just going to renovate it and see what I could do to put small businesses in there or a new restaurant of mine or whatnot. But upon looking at it and seeing the renovations that were going to need to be taking place in there, and it got up into the millions, it started to seem like a bad idea to renovate when building a bigger building with more income possibilities were possible. So I had decided, well, I think the biggest and best use of the property is not that building. So working with the city, I did end up getting some grant funding to tear the building down, and then it will be rebuilt into a multi-use building, retail on the first floor, and then, as far as I know right now, 2 stories of residential condos and apartments for the housing need that we need here in Alpena. And also just trying to dress up that end of town so that the river now is the new entrance to the downtown district of Alpena. So just last year, they expanded what the downtown district was. And so now that is now the north entrance to the downtown. And I'm hoping by putting a new facility there, beautifying that end of town. I know there was some other changes going on there with like possibly HPC doing some renovations to their place. And the hospital put a lot of money into renovations and it looks really nice. And so I'm hoping this building will help bring even more beauty to that end. And then our downtown will kind of flow more easily. Some of those buildings will be bought up and more renovations happen and just more beautification for our town.
Yeah. So, there's so many things that you could have done with that space. What led you to kind of come to the idea of a mixed use development? Is that what you would call it?
Well, yep, mixed use. So essentially creating more retail space to attract more small businesses. What I've seen in recent times is that small communities are getting overtaken by box stores and commercialized places. And I'm more in the mindset of, what was the American dream? Can we rebring that to existence again, where like small businesses thrive, crafty places? We have so many cool people in this community and around that have such a neat craft that they do, but they can't afford like a huge storefront, so what I'm hoping to do is build smaller, more sort of incubator style retail spaces so that it'll help small crafty people be able to get their brand known and then possibly move to a bigger brick and mortar on their own. Also, the reason that I chose housing is because we have a need for housing here in Alpena. We can't grow until we have new housing. It's stopping the flow of what's happening with businesses being able to hire good people to work because the pool of people is kind of small. So we need some new fresh faces, including the hospital, who have a hard time bringing in traveling nurses and new doctors to the area. So I'm marketing more towards the hospital and the little higher end condos. And it's really beautiful there when it overlooks the river and it's really close to the hospital, which it's more or less feeling the need for what needs to happen right there in that space and fulfilling that need.
Yeah. And, there are so many, chances for Alpena to grow. We have, the Viking cruise ship that's coming in, bringing attention to Alpena. But is there anything, in your journey that decided for you to switch from, doing the fresh palette thing, doing the restaurant thing? What was it that, made you want to make the switch to kind of a new idea?
Gotcha. So the fresh palette was pivotal to the downtown. It brought a new heartbeat to the feeling of what our downtown was. And I'm not boasting that. I'm just saying it brought a lot of vibrancy. It brought a lot of community. A business like a thriving restaurant brings people to the table to create that community and that communication and that collaboration. And I hosted a lot of events, a lot of fundraisers, a lot of downtown parties, that sort of thing. And it helped to just bring a vibrancy to the town. But after 15 years, I seen that I could only do so much with that. And in a small business like that, or like any small business here, you're always seeing the owner running the place. And it was really hard to replace myself. I tried to sell it. I tried to get people to run it for me, and it just never really panned out. So at that point, I just had to make the tough decision that if I was going to continue to help my community in another way, I would have to shut that down in order to free up my space and time to go on a new direction in my life, which is this podcast, is land development, is working on collaborating with the community to find out what is Alpena? Who are we? What do we want to be? Where do we want to grow? Where do we not want to grow? How do we build an economy? How do we protect our natural resources? These are shifty and shady times in the world in general. And it's time to reflect back. I think COVID was supposed to show us that, where is home? Where is community? Where is safety? That's what Harbor Spaces, the podcast, stands for, is like a safe space. How do we create that safe space? How do we create a space where we know that our neighbors have our back, that we know that we have fresh water, that we know that we have all the resources we know that we need to survive if something happens like a solar flare and knocks out the grid system? Are we prepared for that? Are we even thinking about that? These are different times. Everybody feels it within their heart and soul that this isn't 1992. This is 25 and on the way to 2030. It just seems like there's a lot of frequency in the air that needs to be thought about. And so shifting out of the restaurant industry, which I'll probably never really get fully away from. I still do catering through the Fresh Palette. And in fact, I do have a little surprise coming shortly about that. So that'll be known here soon too. So I'll never really get out of it. Whenever you come into this existence with a gift, you need to highlight it. You don't get rid of it. You're good at what you do, so you do it, and you're going to grow in this industry, right? So I came in with a gift to cook and to host and to be in this hospitality industry. So I'll never get rid of that. And it really just hones you into developing something even more, which is trust in your community, somebody that people can look to ideas and be like, that makes sense because I've seen what he can do with a restaurant. So the restaurant was really more of a space for me to build my own community and trust within that community so that I can help find a vision for the place that we want to go from here.
Right. And so talking about that place that you want to go, what do you hope is kind of the vision and the attitude that people get about developing Alpena?
It's a great question. It's really about getting back to that sense of what does 7 generations look like from now? We do a lot of things in the world that is very immediate now with social media and everything bringing things on so quickly. We really just tend to just say, okay, does that work for now? Let's move forward. Does it work for now? Let's move forward. And we've lost that long view, that view of what does it look like 100 years out, which is very difficult in this day and age to think about, but we need to really resonate with that for a second and see what that vision looks like. And so I don't know necessarily what that looks like, but what I do know is it's very hard to have a small business in America in general, but in a town like ours that really only has tourism 4 months out of the year, the other 8 months are very difficult, and without a slowly increasing economy, that makes it very hard to make it through those 8 months so that that you're going to survive the other 4. And so we have to look at trying to develop an economy that's a little longer season for the tourism. So we need to look at how do we do that? Can we create an international dark sky for the whole northeastern Michigan, where we're now bringing in tourism from not just downstate and across state and Chicago and surrounding areas, but we're bringing in international, people that want to come here to look at the stars, to look at the lake, to feel the calmness, so it's really about building an economy on preserving your resources and then showcasing what that is. What people love about Alpena, and I think that you felt it when you moved here, was that it's like Cheers. It's like the place where everybody knows your name, and they're interested in what you're doing, and they genuinely care about you, and that's being lost across the globe, and definitely in America right now with the separation of views and ideologies and whatever. It's really just time to look back, to look forward, which means stepping back, seeing what we want for the long vision, and then as a community, communicating about it, collaborating about it, and creating the vision and the foundation that we want to see for our future. Like, how do we keep this sense of peace and calmness and clean water and beautiful resources? How do we keep that and build a little economy on top of that? I don't necessarily know. I'm just here to voice it and ask the same questions you are, and then help Alpena shape that vision, and Northeastern Michigan in general, because it's the last undeveloped area in Michigan, and it's kind of like it's being encroached on, and I want to see it preserved.
Right. And I think that's something that, we have a very large elderly population here in Alpena, and Michigan is basically one of the, oldest states based on ages, population, in our country. And so I think that's something that everyone can agree on, is that Alpena is a gem, is rare, is something that should be celebrated, is something that people should come see,
Yeah.
But what do you have to say to the people who have been here for a long time and are maybe hesitant about seeing change? What do you say to them?
Valid question, because that is what needs to be taken into consideration. And that's why I say I'm just opening up the doorway to say that we need to build an economy, but I, like them, don't necessarily want to see change. What I do want to see is, how do we foster that little bit of change that helps small businesses be able to thrive? When you're a small business and you're competing with box store money, you're against a corporation who can afford to go through things like COVID and go through economic depressions during the 8 months that things aren't happening. So to that older population, I say, I'm with you 100%. I don't want to see that change. I want to see it preserved, and I want to see this quaintness stay, because that is the gem. That is the thing. That is the feeling within your heart that you get when you feel cohesion and resonance with Earth. It's not so busy and bustly. And when you want to turn out and take a left out onto the road, you're not waiting for 20 minutes, like nobody wants to see that change where it's just crazy busy because we had to bring external dollars in. I don't want that at all either. I'm saying I'm with the older population. I'm with that mindset. In fact, I'm anti-development, if anything. What I'm not anti is how to keep small businesses thriving. And that's sort of my key, where I say I had to close down my business because I kind of realized I couldn't retire on it. After 15 years of working in blood, sweat, and tears, and you think, okay, I thought this was the American dream, that I could just run this one business, raise my family, and retire on it. And when I didn't have anything in the bank to retire on after 15 years, I'm like, okay, there's a problem here. And then I seen it in all my friends that own businesses, and they're in there working night and day. And I'm like, okay, you have the same problem I have, So again, to the older population, I'm with you 100%. I don't want to see this crazy change. What I want to see is preservation, but also economically, we have to do something. Otherwise, we're going to be overtaken by box stores and corporations, and because they're the ones that can afford to do it because they have outsider money. We don't. So I don't have the answer, but I'm saying, please bring those answers to me. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to help steward it in the way that it needs to go, and be the voice of reason between economy and not change.
Absolutely. And I think, your plans, even on a smaller scale, just your plans for the big boy development is something that does help support the town of Alpena, the small business in Alpena. It's not about bringing something extra in. It's about growing what we already have here.
Correct.
And so I think what you have planned is in line with your vision for the town. And is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything else you'd like to add?
Not necessarily, just that this town is an absolute gem. And, as change is happening across the planet, it's just time to go within and reflect on what we really want to see change and what the vision really is. And, and I'm saying this because as people look at that development, Big Boy, I see comments online and people say to me, you're bringing a Red Lobster in, you're bringing this, you're doing that. And they're like talking to a chef who like had a restaurant for 15 years.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And clearly you probably don't want that, and I want people to really reflect on what they're saying when they're asking for these name brand stores and these corporations to come in, and what that really does to your local community and your ability to support your youth groups and your baseball teams and your small little niche things that make your community so fun to be in. When you have corporations that move in and that money leaves your town, and so you really want to think about what you're saying when you're asking for these box stores and these corporations and these Starbucks and these whatnots. That's I know that's what you want because you think it makes your town look cool and thrive, but let's keep that out on M32 where it can grow out there. Like Home Depot and Meijer and Walmart, all that can grow out there and flourish. That's fine. But let's look at our downtown and let's keep it quaint and cute. Like when the Viking cruise ship's coming in, they're taking pictures because they don't see a Starbucks. They don't see a, name brand thing. They're like, it's all quaint and cute here. And that's the feeling that we want to preserve and keep, because that's what keeps people coming back. They're not looking to come visit a town that feels like every other town. They're coming to visit a town that feels like it's been there for a while, that it has community, that it has each other's back, and it feels like something different than they've been in a long time. And that resonance within their heart feels like something for them. And then they go back and they tell their friends, like, dude, you got to check this little town out, Alpena. It's so cute, and that's what will help bring that economic stability. And they're just coming to check it out. They have a job. They're not necessarily looking to move here. They're looking to have that feeling within their heart, like they really actually had a vacation, like they actually got to chill, that their frequency was brought down to somewhere they could remember that it's been when they were a child, or when they're in their moments of peace, So essentially, I don't have anything more to say except for let's look at the vision. Let's make sure it's in alignment with our heart center and that we are working together as a community to build this together and not just let the division and the polarity that's happening across the planet affect our small community. Because what people love about this place, and I'll just bring this up because having the Fresh Palette and throwing so many fundraising events, we raised so much money for local community, like Boys and Girls Club or Zonta or Friends Together, whatever it was. This community, like I've never seen on the planet, always comes together and gives their last $100 to this, cancer treatment for just an individual. And, they might even be having a hard time eating this week, but they're fine with giving some money. And I'm telling you, that does not happen across the planet. I've traveled internationally now. I know that doesn't happen. That is a unique thing. And so when I seen how unique that is and how giving this community is, they are so already there as a community, supporting each other, having each other's back, that needs to be cherished. That is what Alpena is.
It's their identity.
It is your identity, and it's beautiful. And so, as we get flooded by the media and this division and this polarity and stuff, we have to say, is that really us? And I don't think it is, because I think there's so much care and love and kindness in this community that's what we need to be focused on, not all the other stuff. Get out of the jazz. We don't want that. It's not who we are. Who we are is loving, kind, caring, compassionate humans. And that's why I'm here. And that's the whole vision for anything that I'm doing here.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me here and talking with you about all of your wonderful visions.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much. Welcome to our community. It's an honor to have you here. And thanks again for visiting Harbor Spaces, and we'll see you again soon.
All
Thank
right.
you.